I have seen it work for a lot of people in my community. I actually have a few friends who are guys who pretty much never work out without consuming maybe a gummy or having like a little hit beforehand.
Right.
And their feedback to me is that it helps them kind of get in the zone.
All right, so I have invited Brittany here with us today to talk about staying on track in fitness and health in seasons of, stress or the holidays or what it may be that could be a potential distraction. So Brittany is actually a new member to our team, our marketing team. If you see a lot of our digital media presence, it's her behind it. She's also has an insane resume behind her. So I'm going to say some of the things, but you're probably going to tell us things I don't even know about today, which I'm excited to learn about. So you are a social media influencer, a real life one in the flesh. So honored to be here.
Oh gosh, in the flesh.
You've also spent years as a competitive bodybuilder. How cool. You've ran a company, Body by Britt, for 4 years where you helped women all over the world, not just in the United States, help them with their nutrition and fitness goals. And you own a beautiful swimwear line, Sov Swim. And yeah, you're here in Nashville now.
Yes, and I love it. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on the team and, of course, on the pod. This is so fun.
It is. Yeah, so we want to talk today about, staying on track when you have specific fitness and health goals. And a lot of that revolves around food and making sure you're, setting yourself up for success there. So we want to hear some of your tips and tricks. But before we dive into that, why don't you give us a little background about like your, past in fitness so we know where you're coming from.
Absolutely, yes. So I have quite a long history in fitness, so I will try to sum it up for us.
Cool.
But it kind of started for me as a teenager, which I'm old enough now to say 10 years ago, so that's fun. In high school, I struggled with a lot of disordered eating, and I think many women do. And when I was kind of going through treatment for that, I was basically directed to obviously gain weight, which is what I needed to do at the time.
Okay.
And I decided in those moments that I wanted to try to weightlift and just do something different. Looking back, I think for me it was kind of a new sense of control of like, okay, if I can't control being this size, then let me control how healthy I am or how far I can run or whatever that looks like. Okay. So it's possible that I originally got into it for maybe not the best reasons as a teenager, but it has really evolved into, I think, the reason that I am like healthy and functioning, and it's been just the cornerstone of my career. So I'm really grateful for that. But I basically got into weightlifting in high school and started competing in bodybuilding competitions as a bikini competitor. And at this time, there was really nobody on social media that was doing this. There were maybe one or two influencers in the fitness space, and I just constantly would look online like female weightlifting exercises and bodybuilding.com, and there were just no resources for me. So I started competing. I think I did 6 shows in my first year when I was like 17.
Oh, wow.
I was a baby, and I was doing really hard diets, weight training every day, really killing myself to win. But, for me, it was such a healthy way to start eating more and keeping track of that. And it was really, really valuable for me at that time.
Right, because if you're lifting weights, you got to like really fuel your body to build the muscle mass. That's interesting that you turned to that as a solution.
Definitely. And I think, at the time, it forced me, like you said, to eat because I needed protein to have muscle and I needed muscle to win. So It was kind of the avenue for me to have a healthier body. And I competed for years. I ended up moving to England and I competed there as well. And through all of this, at some point, I started a YouTube channel. I was getting a lot of messages on Instagram back when there, again, were really no fitness influencers out there saying like, hey, what do you eat? What's your diet? How do you prep for a show? Tell me what you eat in a day. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just make videos about it.
Cool.
I literally started filming with my cell phone, started on YouTube, and just really built an amazing community of women that were looking for resources for nutrition, for exercise, that were at the time really only out there for men, like big guys lifting in the gym.
Yeah.
So I started YouTube, and after a couple years of that, pre-COVID, I guess about 2 years pre-COVID, I started building Body by Britt.
Okay.
So I couldn't afford at the time to hire a company to do it, so I learned how to code, and I learned how to build an app, which was a crazy, crazy year, but I was able to come out with Body by Britt, and what I did there was provide not only like ebooks and guides for single-time purchase for my workout programs or workout, plans for up to 12 weeks, but the clients that I had one-on-one, I offered FaceTimes every week. We were in group chats through COVID. We did workouts together via Zoom, and I just built this community of women as far as Japan and Australia that became friends and knew each other. And I talked to them every week and helped them kind of reach their fitness goals, and it was incredible. It was such a special time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you still run Body by Britt?
I don't anymore. I did Body by Britt through, I guess, a year after COVID.
Okay.
So 2 years before and 2 years after. And I kind of found that my passion is making an impact. It's connecting with women. It's providing resources, especially not only in the physical health side of things, but the mental health side of things. And I found that I was able to reach more people and have more of an impact via social media communities versus trying to manage 100 FaceTimes a week.
You're right.
And those are relationships I still have and friends that I still have, and some of those girls are friends with each other, but it just didn't make sense for me long term to personal train forever.
And how did you develop when you were, earlier on in your fitness journey with the lack of resources? How did you learn about how to properly nourish yourself and properly feed yourself to be able to build muscle mass since there was the lack of resources?
Definitely, I learned very old school bodybuilder way of thinking at the beginning. But there are a lot of core principles that come from the bodybuilding world that I think really can and should apply to people today. So some of those basic rules back then that you probably heard was like, there's a window that you have to have a protein shake after your workout, which false. There's lots of, amounts of things that can be really overwhelming. So I had a coach when I was a teenager who really advised me to keep it simple. And she said, all of your meals, I want you to follow a 1-1-1 rule.
Okay.
1 protein, 1 veggie, 1 carb.
Okay.
Start there every meal. I want you to have 4 meals a day. And if you can do that for 6 weeks, then we can talk about doing a show. So my kind of base of nutrition was starting there and learning to incorporate vegetables and not just eat mac and cheese and incorporate, healthy carbs. And that doesn't always look like French fries. For me, it was a very loose mindset of learning about nutrition. And obviously over time, I've been able to enhance that and learn really what my body needs. But so much of that is just being educated about, your body needs 1 gram of protein per pound of weight.
Right.
And that goes for losing weight and gaining weight.
Yeah.
At the minimum, you need that. And if you're not doing that, then you're probably not losing weight if you want to, and you're probably not gaining muscle if you want to. So some of those core principles.
And you're just kind of malnourished at that point.
Absolutely.
I worked with a health coach. I was trying to learn how to eat. This is wild. We don't learn how to eat when we're growing up. This is something I'm really trying to make sure I course correct there with our kids right now and having them learn how to eat while I'm learning how to eat. But once the 1 gram of protein, all that, and once I started tracking what I was eating versus what I needed to be eating, I was sick with how much food I needed to be eating. Yes. And here I was thinking I was overeating, but that's a lot of protein. My stomach hurt for a long time until it kind of rebalanced itself. But we got to eat a lot of protein.
It is a huge misconception, especially among women, because there's so much media and information about eat 1,200 calories and
calories don't matter. They matter,
but in the grand scheme of things, they really don't. And so many women that I have trained over the years, the biggest shock to them was how much they had to eat. And they were like, how could I possibly lose weight? I'm so full.
Right.
I'm like, you are giving your body the minimum of what it needs today. You've got to trust this process over time. And I think most women, that's the biggest mistake they make when they undereat.
They starve themselves to try to lose weight, and then their hormones got out of balance. As soon as I started eating protein, my cycle got regulated again, and my acne kind of started going away. Stress started getting a little easier. It's wild, just eating not even the right food, just the right amount of food.
Right amount makes such a difference. And then once you kind of have that down and you can say, okay, I know I'm eating enough and I'm eating consistently. You know, I'm not eating once at 5 a.m. and once at 11 p.m., but I'm on a schedule. I'm eating properly. Once you have that down, then I think from there you can go into, okay, what foods am I actually putting in my body past the 1-1-1 rule?
Okay.
And what does my body need that it's not getting?
Right. Yeah, so like really learning how much you have to eat, how often you have to eat. Hydration, something I always talk about, staying hydrated in that. It's great on a good day. It's really easy to achieve, but it's not always a good day, and so I can fall off track really quickly. But I know you have some really cool like tips and tricks on how to stay on top of that. So what are some of those things?
Definitely. So I would say the number one thing is to not buy food that you don't want to consume when you have a bad day. If it is not in the house, then you are much less likely to reach for it when you're busy or you're on the run or you need something to grab on the way out. That's the biggest thing. You know, in my house, we don't buy Oreos because we know that if we have a hard day, we're going to eat the entire sleeve of Oreos.
Right.
But you know, that goes to say I don't have children. I know a lot of households have to have fun snacks around for the kids. So I would say, and I even do this with my boyfriend at home, I make the snack hard to access. So, for example, I'll put it on like the very top shelf above the refrigerator where I have to get a chair to get to it.
Right.
So if it's in the house for someone else, it is difficult for me to get it, and I'm much less likely to even think about it if it's not in my direct line of view.
Right.
So maybe if you have children, what that looks like is maybe it's in a drawer and it's out of sight, out of mind. So you're reaching for things that are healthier options first.
Right.
Now, the other thing that I think is very important, and I'm sure people are sick of hearing this in the fitness world, is preparation.
Yeah.
Meal prepping is key. And I will say, when I started my fitness journey, I hated meal prepping because I was meal prepping gross food.
Right.
Like chicken and plain rice and just gross food. I was never excited about it. And I am not somebody who likes to heat up leftovers in the microwave. So it was always very hard for me. And what I've learned that has really worked for me is on Sunday specifically, or Saturday, whatever your schedule looks like for you, is to prep pieces of meals that you know you're going to eat. So, for example, in my household, we eat a lot of chicken, a lot of rice, a lot of toppings on those, usually peppers and onions, for example. So what I'll do on a Sunday is I'll go through and I will chop up all the peppers, all the onions. I'll cook a big crock pot of rice and maybe a couple other veggies that may be thrown in the meal. And then on the days that I'm eating that, I will make the actual protein source, the chicken or beef, whatever. I'll make it fresh because I know myself, I will not eat it heated up.
It gets weird sometimes.
It gets weird. Yeah. If you're somebody that can do that, amazing, more power to you, prep it. But if not, I suggest the air fryer. Throw it in, leave it for 10 minutes, don't even think about it, and then your food can be ready. The times where you start ordering Uber Eats or you stop at McDonald's on the way home or whatever that looks like is because you don't have something appetizing waiting for you in the fridge. So I've found, okay, if there's a few ingredients that I really like, I can use these and I can make a meal that I know I'm going to like once I get home.
Yeah. And it takes that like little bit of effort. We try to always have like rice in the fridge. Yeah. We try to always have grilled chicken in the fridge. And then, but we fall down the slippery slope where, you know, we get home late, the kids are ornery because we got home late, and we're like, oh, let's just order something. But in the time it took for Uber Eats to come, we could have just like thrown some breast on the grill. But that slippery slope, like dominoes, right? Because then so we ordered Uber Eats that day, so then you're like less incentivized. I don't know how that psychologically works, but you're like, well, now I can just be lazy on that meal. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's really, you talk about making snacks inaccessible, probably just like deleting Uber Eats and making that inaccessible would be a good, or like disconnecting your card or something like that.
Anything that just requires one more step. It's, you know, I use the example like maybe a smoker that's trying to quit nicotine.
Right.
If you have to take that step where you're like, oh, I have to go all the way upstairs and open this door and go in the closet, by the time you get there, the urge is probably going to pass.
It's past, yeah.
And really often when we reach for an unhealthy item or a snack, it's like an emotional reaction to something. So if you make it just that extra moment to pass, then you probably won't even reach for it.
Yeah.
It'll pass. Yeah.
During the holidays, do you meal prep and bring your food with you, or how do you stay on track in a social setting. So maybe not even the holidays, but say you're going out to dinner with friends, so you're eating at a restaurant, or even at the office, and when we all go out to eat together. How are you keeping things on track in those scenarios?
Definitely. So before I kind of go into keeping on track, I would say it's really, really important to note that I am not perfect by any means. I still eat out. I still order Uber Eats. I have my desserts. I do all the things. But in the seasons where I maybe have a goal, or I'm going on a vacation, or who knows what it is, I do definitely try to stay on track. But it is important to give yourself meals that you don't even think about. Like, if we have an amazing day at work and we're going to go celebrate with pizza, I'm not going to blink twice at that. We're going to go celebrate with pizza.
Right.
And just to make sure you're giving yourself grace to not, miss out on important things because of food. It's not worth it. Food comes and goes, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you are somebody that, maybe you have a specific goal in mind, or maybe your health is just a priority and you want to stay on track in a social setting, something that I like to do is really just go back to that 1-1-1 rule. Okay, we're looking at the restaurant menu. I need a protein, a veggie, and a carb source. And of my 10 carb sources, I have mac and cheese, mashed potatoes, or a baked potato. What am I going to choose? Of course I would love to eat mac and cheese for every meal. But in that moment, we could say, okay, maybe I choose the baked potato and I don't get butter on it. And I salt and pepper it.
Yeah.
Those small choices can add up to big changes. So in a social setting where you don't have your own food, I would say to just try to make smart choices when you're looking at that menu. As tempting as it is to order the giant brownie at the end of the meal, it's not worth, feeling like you missed a goal because you indulged in a moment that you didn't want to.
Yeah, the goal guilt is real.
The goal guilt can be real.
The guilt creep that comes in, you're like, God, I know I was the one that made that decision. Damn it.
Yeah. And, something I'm learning as I get older, too, is how important it is to keep promises to myself and to, take responsibility for those. So if I say, okay, I'm going to go to the gym every day this week, instead of, feeling guilty and mad at myself at the end if I don't go, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to own this. I'm going to take responsibility for it, and I'm going to do better next week.
That's cool.
And I think having that attitude is so important. And, when you go into a holiday or you go out to dinner, to not, try to work it off the next day.
Right.
It doesn't matter. One meal isn't going to change the whole trajectory of your health goal. To just know, again, give yourself grace. Hey, I indulged a little. We'll do better next week, and to move forward. And that's really all you can do there. But if you're somebody with, diet restrictions and you are bringing food to the table, you're bringing food to a social gathering, I would just say, you talk a lot about being your own health advocate, and I think that's really amazing, and I'm learning from that. And to do the same thing in those situations. To be like, hey, I require this, and haha, laugh all you want that I brought my grilled chicken here, but, these are my goals, and in my opinion, if somebody is your person, then they're going to support you 100% and want to make that work for you no matter what.
Yeah. I've been going through health stuff that you know about, and I've had to, really pack my own food, or, when we go out, I can't eat because there's things that I've become highly allergic to. And it's been interesting to see who kind of not cast judgment, but it's just kind of like, what? Yeah. And who fully embraces it and, rallies behind it and says hey, can you tell me what your restrictions are? I'll prep something specific for you. That's so huge when someone will cook to my dietary restrictions right now. Yeah. It's huge.
Yes, it's really important. And, I experienced a lot of that when I was on prep for bodybuilding competitions too. We would, go out to bars at night and I couldn't drink. So I would just walk around with a cup of water and still have a great time.
Sure.
And, it just, I think it really shows you who is in your corner with your goals and who's going to support you.
So you mentioned that snacking is usually the result of an emotional response, good or bad. And so what's causing some of those urges to want to do that?
Definitely. So I think there are a few different things that cause this for people. And, not everybody's emotional reaction is to reach for food. I think it's an inclination for some, not all. But what I'm learning right now is that in therapy specifically, is that we all have these parts of ourselves that act as managers basically for difficult emotions or new emotions or surprising ones, whatever that looks like. And these managers are kind of the pieces of us that protect us from feeling those feelings. Okay. So I think really often a lot of people use snacking or binging as a distraction from that feeling. It's easy to say, hey, I'm just going to eat this whole pack of Oreos and not think about anything else.
Right.
So what I'm learning now is if I'm reaching for like a ridiculous, we were saying earlier, raw cookie dough is my vice.
Oh my gosh,
if
so
I'm
good.
reaching for raw cookie dough, I know that not only is it bad for me, but it's probably not safe to be eating raw cookie dough. So if I'm reaching for that, then what is actually going on with me that I'm trying to avoid by indulging in this like sweet thing that I know isn't good for me.
Right.
And just, taking a moment and trying to think about like, hey, why did I do that? Not to be hard on myself or mean to myself, but, is there something else going on that caused this? Or maybe, hey, I meal prepped. Why did I reach for this thing instead of that? And just to spend time with yourself and understand why you're making the choices that you are around nutrition, and then kind of work from there.
Cool. Very smart. Well, this is a cannabis podcast, so I feel like of course, we're going to talk about it. And it's something you and I have talked about, before when we were getting to know each other. And it's something we're going to talk about in a future episode, but munchies. And sometimes trainers use cannabis to invoke munchies intentionally when they have someone that is just really struggling to eat. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about that? Do you have a personal experience with it?
Absolutely, yes. So my personal experience has really been around stages in between bodybuilding competitions. You have this time frame where your goal is to gain muscle. And, in my experience in those seasons, I was trying to gain up to 20 pounds from where I was. And
that's a lot of weight.
A lot of weight.
Yeah.
And I am not a person with a good, appetite clock, if you will.
Sure.
I don't get hungry often. It's kind of a thing that I operate on this schedule and I remind myself to eat. I just don't have a huge appetite. So this was a huge issue for me in all of those seasons. And at that time, I would set alarms on my phone to remind myself to eat. Or it would be midnight and I'd be trying to get in another 50 grams of protein.
Right.
So for me, eventually, after probably several years of this, I kind of leaned on Delta 9 where I was living at the time. Or actually, I guess it was Delta 8. This year. And I found that it made it so much easier for me to consume the food that I needed to. So I would take it probably around dinner time, and I was able to eat almost double than what I normally could. So for me, it really, really helped with my goals. It also helped me just to manage my stress and the stress that I was putting on my body in those times as well, so I could sleep properly, and just a really, really valuable tool that you can use if your goal is to gain weight, or maybe you're on one of these new seasons of life where you're tracking your food and you just need help hitting that protein goal. I think it's a great tool.
So it's like have munchies on protein, not on Oreos.
Yes. So the key there is to have the protein available.
Right.
Again, to have healthy snacks, good snacks available to you. For me, I love charcuterie. So I will make a healthy charcuterie board sometimes before I will indulge in the flour, the ganja, so that it's right there, it's ready to go, and then that's the first thing that I reach for.
Love it.
I try to just have the snack ready.
This is how you hack your munchies, y'all.
Yes.
You have the good shit available.
Yes, exactly.
I bet no one thought we were going to give advice to consume cannabis to purposely have the munchies to stay on track with fitness goals, but we just did it. I think I've enjoyed using cannabis before working out too, and kind of building cannabis into my workout routine as this I get to go puff a little and then go to the gym or go on my walk. Is that something that you've seen work for yourself or for those in your community?
I have seen it work for a lot of people in my community. I actually have a few friends who are guys who pretty much never work out without consuming maybe a gummy or having a little hit beforehand.
Right.
And their feedback to me is that it helps them kind of get in the zone. They feel like, okay, my headphones are in, the music's on, and I'm in this zone, and I can just have a good time and focus on me. And it helps them to not be distracted by everything going on.
Right.
And, I think, too, one of the big reasons that people fall off track is because they are worried about going to the gym and that social aspect of being in public and working out. Which, the truth is...
It's the worst. Why is it so bad?
It's really uncomfortable. And what I tell everyone is... when you're at the gym, are you looking around and judging people?
I mean, no.
So why on earth do you think
you know what? I'm
you?
looking around and admiring people. I'm like, shit, they're here busting their ass, and I'm here whining about it the whole way.
But, you're not looking at people being negative or judgmental. I know I'm not.
No.
So every time I feel myself getting that anxiety, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not thinking bad thoughts about other people, so surely they're not thinking bad thoughts about me.
Yeah, we got to get out of our heads.
Get out of our heads. And I think cannabis is a really great way to do that, just to kind of put away that social anxiety. Now, for those people who maybe feel a little paranoia when they're high, maybe not the best option for you.
Right.
I don't have that paranoid feeling when I'm high, so for me, it helps me kind of just be in that zone, not worry about what everyone else is thinking, and just enjoy my time.
Well, and cannabis is known to help with like the recovery process of working out too. So it's a win-win.
Yes.
If
win-win.
done right.
Absolutely.
We want the win-wins. Okay, so recap us how to stay on track with our fitness goals in seasons of stress so that we can kind of turn to these tips and tricks.
Absolutely. So I would say number one, meal prep. You're sick of hearing it, but number one, meal prep. Start small. Start with a couple veggies. Start somewhere attainable, right? Mm-hmm. Number one. Number two, stop buying things that you don't want to consume when you have the munchies or when you're stressed or when you're busy. Mm-hmm. Or if you can't do that, put them somewhere that is difficult for you to access. Part three, have grace with yourself. It's okay to indulge and enjoy times or go to dinner, have happy hour, whatever that is. And, don't try to fix it the next day or try to undo it. Give yourself grace and move forward and have a better week.
I love that. Those are some great things. So in our next episode, we're going to talk about the difference of Delta 8 and Delta 9, and it'll be interesting to learn about how those two different THC molecules affect things like munchies.